Well, good morning, Life Fellowship. It's good to see you. Now, you all should be wide awake because you got the extra hour of sleep. When our first service, we were way packed also. It was hard, we have trouble because of social distancing sticking them in because everybody slept their extra hour and normally come to the second service and say, well, I'm already up, so I'm going to come into the first service. But it's good to see you all here this morning. We've got an unusual service today, and that we're going to take a break on our study of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to have what we usually do twice a year, which is just a conversation that kind of updates you and kind of gives you a look into things that we're planning and working on and just trying to do kind of a communication engagement. So that's what we're going to do. Before we get started, I wanted you to hear from Pastor Ben, though, who has been recovering at home from COVID. And so we're going to have just a brief greeting from him as we get started this morning.
Good morning, Life Fellowship. I'm sorry I can't be with you again this morning, but I did want to show my face and let you know how much I appreciate all the well wishes, the texts, the cards for me and my family over the last month and a half. We've been through a lot. I had COVID for a week. I had pneumonia for 2 weeks, and I'm still dealing with the recovery of those illnesses. And so it's taken my body a little bit longer to recover, but I want you to know I'm doing well. My family's doing well. We're doing so much better, and we have just coveted your prayers for us during this time. One of the things when you go through something like this, I believe it teaches you a lot of things and it shows you a lot of things. And if there's one thing I'm carrying out of this experience is gratitude. And I know that might sound a little interesting or maybe inappropriate when you go through something difficult, but here's what I've learned is that when you go through limitations in life and when God takes things away, you start to remember and realize how good God is for the things He does give you. I'm extremely thankful for my wife and the way that she's just cared for me in sickness and in health. She's just been an amazing rock for our family through this difficult time and to me personally, and I can't thank God enough for my wife. I'm thankful for God teaching me so many things during this season, and I think that when your health is taken away, even for a short period of time, and then God starts restoring things, it's little things that you just begin to rejoice and worship over. And so, in fact, I'm in the office today with friends, and just being here and sharing with you is a blessing I don't take for granted. And so, I'm entering a season where God's teaching me how to be thankful for so many things. But today is not about me. This is about what we have been working towards and working on for months, really. And this morning, as Pastor Dan is going to be leading this conversation that all of us, elders, pastors, staff, we've been talking about for months. And a lot of this originated from our elder retreat back in January. And we believe that God is preparing our church for something significant for the kingdom of God's impact here in Lake Norman. And a lot of these things that we were thinking about, praying about, dreaming about, we're in the process of working, and then COVID happened. And even in the midst of COVID, I believe that the mission and the call and the vision that God gave us almost a year ago, there's a reason for that. And COVID, I don't believe is hindering that. I think it's actually giving us an opportunity to do what God's calling us to do, to live out His mission, His kingdom in Lake Norman and beyond. And so I'm excited for Pastor Dan to be able to share with you some of the things we've been planning and dreaming and just show God showing us what is another chapter, another opportunity we have to live out the Great Commission through Life Fellowship and through His call for our lives. And so it's good to be here. I'm praying for all of us. I'm praying for our church. I'm praying for God to continue to give us continued movement for His kingdom in our nation and in our community. And I hope to be with you again soon in person.
So it's good to see Pastor Ben, and I hope that you'll continue to pray for him as he regains his strength and as he is able to re-engage in the coming weeks. But I did not want us, and he did not want us to delay talking about some of these things because you know how it is. Once you hit November, man, the end of the year just comes barreling at you, and there's just a lot on everybody's plates, lots going on. So we wanted to make sure that we take some time and kind of do a rapid information download for you. So let me talk first of all about COVID. I think most of us, are realizing that there is a resurgence of active cases going on. I don't know about you, but I see it on my Facebook wall. I see it in my social media, and I hear it in the church. Thankfully, though, there have been people in the church who have had COVID. They did not catch it here, and for the most part, they have not brought it, here. We had one or two little instances where we had a couple of scares where we, isolated the folks that were impacted, but we've not had anything massive happen. We've not had an outbreak that was related to any church function, and we're going to try to keep that the case, all right? So we're going to try to be wise and practical and yet still continue with some of the things that God has laid upon our heart. But because it is cold and flu season, as the temperatures drop, people gather indoors more. We wanted to add a couple of layers of precaution. Before I do that, let me just say this. Regardless of who you are, just remember this: how you feel about COVID and the response to COVID and the strength of that, as strongly as you feel that way, there is someone else, probably within arm's length of you right now, who feels differently about it and just as strongly as you do. All right? That's just the reality of this. This has been one of those kind of situations where it's been a bit of a challenge for leadership, I'll be quite honest with you, because everybody has a pretty strongly held opinion on what we should do. And there are some that think we should be doing more, and there are some that we're completely overreacting, and I get that. And if you're not prepared to handle a lot of opinions, you probably shouldn't be in leadership. However, we just do want you to know this: we're doing our best, all right? And this is a period of time which we lean into grace and ask you to be patient with us as much as is possible. But I do want you to know that as we go into the cold and flu season, we're trying to have extra precautions. So here's what we're doing. First of all of our existing protocols we're going to keep in place, all right? So, we're doing a lot of extra cleaning. We're doing the social distancing. We follow the governor's directives as they come. Up to the point where we are continuing to have services and so forth because of the court case that allows us to do so without as many requirements as some other meetings do. But we're going to continue to do that. But we're going to add a couple of things. First of all, we're having some filters installed in the ventilation system for the church, so that it is a special kind that they use in airlines. Basically, it can catch the microbes, the viruses, and so forth, and filter them out. Something you may not be aware of in commercial design of air filtration systems: our air drops from the ceiling and it goes to the floor, and then it is sucked back out and recirculated, and that's how it's done. All right, so that is the same way they do it in airplanes and in other major areas where you've got a lot of people that are in. And I say that so that you know that I think sometimes you kind of get the image that there's all this air going this direction, and in a building like this or in a room like this, it actually goes down, across, and out, and recirculates. So we'll be filtering that at an extraordinary level, and we've consulted with some industry experts and so forth on what the best filters for that is. So those are going to be installed. Secondly, we have purchased a misting service. Well, actually, we're doing it ourselves, but it's a thing that you bring in and you mist the entire room, and it has virus-killing properties in the mist. So if you ever come in, at some point and you see mist or whatever, don't worry. It's not something that is dangerous or any way, and it's not corrosive. It's not going to damage anything. We've been using it in the preschool actually since last year, and now we're just going to be doing it building wide. And so it's just another layer of protection. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to turn one of our sections, and if we need to, we'll turn both of them into it, but one of our sections of our stadium seating, and we're going to turn that into a masks-only section. So we're going to ask that if you come in and you want to be in the mask-only seating, that you'll be able to do that. You'll be in the back, which means that you'll not have anybody behind you that may have taken their mask off or whatever. And then we're also going to allow you to be dismissed separately first, and perhaps even out of a different exit, so that you don't have to come into contact with somebody who may not be wearing a mask. So if you're at risk, or if you're just sensitive to it and want that extra layer of protection, that's going to be available for you as well. And it's just our way of saying you matter, you care to us, and we want you to be as comfortable as you can. And by the way, anytime you come and you don't want to even sit in this room, we have a room where you can sit and wear your mask with other people who are wearing their mask and observe it on a screen. And so you may be perhaps more sensitive to it, or maybe you're immune compromised and you have somebody in your family who isn't. They want to be in here, you can be in there. Just all you have to do is tell the usher, and we'll make sure that you get to that. So that's where we're at on that. Now let me talk to you just about other things that are going on in the church. for a few moments. And I just want you to know our posture is that we're going to be leaning into being as normal as we can in the midst of very abnormal circumstances. All right, so I know this caught us completely by surprise. A year ago in January, we got up and said, oh, we're going to do this, and this, and this. We had all these wonderful things planned over the summer, and all these new initiatives are going to start, and then COVID hit, and they were all in the dumpster. So, the question might be, well, so when that happened, did you just say, well, we're going to go on an extended vacation? Oh, no, that's not what we do, all right? If you know me at all, you know that that's just I'm going to regroup and we're going to figure out some other things to do. God is still at work. I'm very confident of that, and I want to find out where he's working and how we can join him in that. And in fact, sometimes God uses these circumstances to force us to rethink how we approach ministry and to force us to re-examine just priorities and all different other kinds of things. And that's what we've been doing. So if anything, I'm busier than ever, and Pastor Ben and I talk a lot about things we're doing. Our staff team's been working on stuff. Our elders have been meeting regularly and talking about items that even come out of our last elders retreat last January, where we put some priorities in place for the church. And so while we were going one direction, COVID kind of changed it, but we're still going to go forward even if we take a different path. So I just want to kind of tell you about some things that we're doing. We're re-engaging as much as we possibly can in practical ministry opportunities to help serve the church and to advance the gospel. For instance, 2 weeks from this weekend, on Friday and Saturday, on the 13th and 14th of November, we're going to be having a student discipleship conference here at the church. And we're going to invite all of our young people who are in grades 6 through 12 to be a part of this. And by the way, the topics we're addressing are the topics that the students in student life have asked us to address. And we're really excited about that. I'm going to be speaking. We've got several others to be speaking. We're going to have meals and games and all kinds of fun stuff going on. There is a fee. It's $55 to be able to come, and that includes everything on it. We always say this: if you can't afford to come, you let us know. We'll make sure you do get to come. But if you can afford for that. But what we've also done is this. We've got a situation where we can do this. If you come and you buy a ticket, you're going to get a second ticket free. And the second ticket for that is so that you can invite someone who doesn't go to Life Fellowship, who may not be a Christ follower, to come with you. And they can meet other Christians and find out they're not squirrely, all right? And they can come and they can hear the gospel, and they can get some of their really tough questions answered, and they can have a good time, because a lot of young people right now, all the way through their 20s, are feeling very isolated and alone because of COVID. They don't get to go to their classes. They don't get to go to a lot of the things they were doing. And this is a great opportunity. It's an open door to be able to say, come on with me. And so we're going to expand it and make the opportunity real. Now, that's real money we're going to spend on this, because there's meals and supplies and all these different things. So this isn't a gimmick. We're not charging you twice as much so that we can give you a free ticket. The real cost is real. In fact, we had to do a couple of things to get it down to that. But what we're going to do is we're going to have someone who's going to write a check to make sure that the extra ones get cared for. So all of you young people who are going to be a part of that, or even if you know of somebody who'd come to be a part of it and you want them to get a ticket, you let me know and we'll make it happen, because we think this is important. Another thing we're doing is we're starting several new life communities across the board. Some people are expanding theirs, but we're finding that people will meet in homes where they won't come to church. By the way, I want to say this to all of you who are watching online. Thank you for doing that. We're excited about that. We're glad that you're watching us. We hope you continue to do so until you feel safe coming back. We've got people all over the world who are watching us right now and will be watching us this week as they replay this. But we are starting these life communities because our church continues to add new people. For instance, on Friday night, we had our first meeting of a group that is going to be for newly marrieds and nearly marrieds. And a lot of these young people in this group, by the way, used to be in the group that Seth Farger and I led, that were college students. And then they got older and they ended up getting married. Some of them got married to each other in the group. I performed several of the ceremonies. And so now they're starting their life. And so it's time for them to have their own life group. And so one of our elders, Mike Seffern, and his wife Jen are going to be leading that. And right now, I think we've got between 8 and 10, maybe 12 young couples that are starting that new life group. They met for fellowship this week, and they're getting started. I started a new one on Wednesday night. I love college kids. That's one of my passions. And because a lot of our college kids have grown and I'd taken a break for about a year, I'm starting a new one. So if you're in that age between 18 and 26, you don't even have to be in college. You can be military, just out of the military on a gap year, whatever. But you're in that age frame and you're single and you'd like to be a part of that. We're going to meet at my house Wednesday night. We met here this Wednesday night. We're going to meet every Wednesday night. Love to have you come be part of that, all right? I was hoping to have 6 my first week. We had 14, and I had 6 people tell me they were going to come and something came up. So it looks like we're going to have between 20 and 24 people just at the beginning of this. And I'm really jazzed about that, all right? So I'd really love to have you come. If you know somebody, let me know, and I'll hit them up. Actually, about a third or maybe even half of the kids kids don't go to Life Fellowship, which is really great. I want people who are non-believers coming so we can introduce them to Christ. So there's so many cool things going on in life communities. But we want you to continue to join those. And if you feel safe doing so, we meet in the houses, and we want those to continue. Kid Life, we've got some cool things going on there, a couple of plans. But one of the things we do need is some more volunteers. We open during our first hour of worship each week. But we really want to open during this hour as well, but we can't until we get more volunteers because of the way COVID is and because of the ratios and so forth, and because we lost some volunteers simply because of COVID. We need another level of staffing to be able to do that. So if you are a former volunteer who wants to re-engage, or if you would be willing to volunteer for the first time, we'll get you through the training and screening and get you a part of that. But I'd really like to see us open that second service hour as we begin the new year. And so that's something. But here's another thing. I've been meeting with Miss Rebecca and Karen, and we're going to do some upgrades in that wing in the coming months. I'm really excited about. You know, we've been in the building for 4 years. This is an important area, and we want there to be a wow effect when our kids come in to learn about Christ. And there's some things that we need to do that we haven't done yet, that we're kind of on the drawing board, but now it's time. Let's get to going with those. And I'm getting ready to start a big project, and Rebecca's been working real hard on this. And quite frankly, this is the time of year where every once in a while somebody who's in business or something says, hey, you know what, you got any special projects I can give toward? Lord's blessed me this year, and I'd like to drop a chunk of a blessing on a project. Come see me, okay? Because I've got a good one this year, and you'll be able to see it. It'll be really cool, and our kids will love it. So I'd love to do that, but we want to get that launched for the first year as well, and I think you're going to be excited about that. Christmas is coming. We're excited about that. Our choir was supposed to go to Germany to sing in the Christmas markets over there, and they can't go because of COVID, so they're going to do a concert for us, maybe 2. They're also going to be doing it at 4 or 5 other churches in the area, and you're not going to want to miss that, so we'll make sure you know about that. We're going to be decorating, not as massively as we used to, but there'll still be wonderful decorations for you, be able to get your family picture taken. And then also, we're going to be having something that we've never done before. I'm excited about. We're going to do a streaming Christmas Eve service for you to watch with your family at home. And Jason and his team are putting this together, and it is going to be so cool. It may be a tradition that's going to take off. And so that, you know, whatever you're doing that evening, plan on about 30, 45 minutes where you can gather around the TV and you'll hear the Christmas story, and you'll hear some beautiful music. And even though if we're not meeting, you know, here in COVID and all the different things, there's still this special spiritual moment that we'll gather as a church family like we did during the lockdown earlier this year. We've also started a new devotional team. Melissa Gibbs is leading this with a team of writers. And so we're going to be taking the messages on Sunday, and we're going to be doing devotions for those that we'll give you through our app and through our website that you'll be able to go to, that will take you deeper into what we're studying and give you some additional perspective on it. And I think that's going to be a really cool thing. And speaking of our app, we have redone and are relaunching our app. And if you don't have the app, you need to go to your app store and download it. Just look it up for Life Fellowship Charlotte. Or you can do this, get out a pen, and I'll tell you how to get to it in just a moment. But just let me tell you this. As you go through it, the way it scrolls is you'll be able to find those things really quickly now. The devotion's going to be on there. The media is going to be on there. So like if you want to listen to the podcast, it'll be right on there. Very quick to be able to get to. You won't have to go through multiple layers. It's very, very user-friendly. I just downloaded it myself, and I think you'll enjoy this new look on the app. If you want to get it even right now, you can do it. You can just type in Life North Carolina, Life NC, all 6 letters, Life, L-I-F-E-N-C, then leave a space, and then app, A-P-P. Type in those words in your message, and then send it to 77977. Very easy to remember, right? 2 7s, 9, 2 7s. 77977, Life NC, space, A-P-P for app. And you send that, they'll send you a link. It'll download immediately to you, and you'll be able to take it and use that. And there's a lot of good things, a lot of good opportunities. You can sign in so that we'll send you push messages for things that are coming up. So I'd urge you to do that. Also want to mention that we're doing some things with new moves. You can't believe how many people are moving to our area right now. It is amazing. This morning I met people from Southern California, New York, Texas, and one other state that were visiting in the first service. And we're having tons of people move into the area. They're visiting. visiting our church, and we want to follow up on that. And I'm so excited about that. But here's the other thing. There are a lot of people who don't know about us yet. So our director of assimilation is coming together, and she's getting the addresses of everybody that's moving in, and we're going to be contacting them personally through the mail, but also in person and through emails in all different kinds of ways, 7 different ways. We're going to be touching them, asking them to come give Life Fellowship a try. So we want you to know we're doing that, as well as people are moving into our area. Right now, it is really booming. The last thing I want to just mention to you, and that kind of seems weird, but it's a family conversation, right? So many of you give online, and praise the Lord for that. Thank you for your faithfulness during this time. We've not had to cut budget during this time because y'all have been faithfully giving. And we're not taking offerings anymore. You're giving online or you're dropping it in the box, a few of you, but most of you either send the check through your bill pay, or you are using ACH, which is a debit, or you're using push pay. Now, push pay is the one that you find on our app, and you find it on our website. Can I ask you to do this? When you do push pay, you need to remember that they're charging us for that. And they're charging it, you say, well, that's just a 2.3%. So you'll know, and I think it's important, we're always honest to you about stuff like this, okay? So you know last year, our push pay fees, are you sitting down? $43,000. $43,000. I know it's cool to get points and go to Disney with your points that you use on your credit card, but if you would be so kind for us to either use an ACH transfer or use the bill pay instead of that, or what you can do is actually there's a little thing down there and say add 2.3% for the fees. If you want to do that, you can do that as well if you really need the points. But if you'd help us with that, can you imagine what we could do for the gospel with $43,000 more a year? It's, I know somebody's saying, we shouldn't even use that at all. Well, if we don't use that at all, quite frankly, we will have a lot less than $43,000 come in. It's convenient. People are using it. But I don't think everybody understands, man, the banks stick you for that. So if you could switch over, and this is what I did. I switch my bill pay every 2 weeks when I get a paycheck. My tithe comes out, my missions offering comes out, and it comes in the form of a check, which is one way to do it. We still have to process it by hand here. It's no big deal. But if you could instead do an ACH transfer, or if you say, I really do want to use my credit card, it's how I do everything else, if you'd hit that little button that adds the 2.3, we'd really appreciate it. $43,000 is a lot. And so somebody said to me when they found out about it, why don't you tell the church that? So I just did. All right? Very good. All right, so now we're going to switch gears and talk about something that's super important to me and Pastor Ben and our staff and our elders. We've been toying around with this for some time. Our mission, God's just bringing some cool things together. So about a year ago, our missions team said, Dan, what I want you to do, and Carolyn Kozlowski's here, she leads their team. And let me just tell you, if you want to know anything about missions, this is our lady. She just the blessing. I tell you what, I just thank the Lord for her every time I see her because she is coordinating our missions in such a way. People are giving more to missions in this church than we've ever done in the history of our church. And it's because we've got some leadership in place on the lay level that are passionate about it. But one of the things that the team that she leads has done, they said, Dan, we want to not just shoot money everywhere and not know where it's going. We want to focus it. And we want a project where we know we're working in on it. And so I spent some time talking to a guy. Church planting is important to us. The gospel is what we're about in missions. So we began working this, and to make a long story short, we've adopted a state in the nation of India called Andhra Pradesh. And we've talked a little bit about it for the last several months. The little bank project we've got going on right now is going toward that. You want to know something cool? Even today, somebody gave me $10,000 to help us plant churches in India just this weekend. So I'm so excited about how folks are giving and so forth. And I don't know what I know we're over 50 by far cry, and it's just so exciting to see what's going on. But for $300, we're planting a church in Andhra Pradesh. You say, what does that mean? You think a church with a steeple? That's not what it is. It is a teacher that we train who goes in and starts a microchurch. And microchurches are important all over the world because they reach people where they're at who would never go to a regular church or who could never afford to build another church. Because when you build a church campus, you got to have land, then you got to have the building, then you got to equip the building, then you got to maintain the building, you got the utilities, you got to have staff, you got all these things, and it costs a lot of money, and these people don't have money. So either we have to send the money over there or it doesn't happen. we're looking at church planting in a completely different way. What did they do in the book of Acts? They did it in their homes, they did it in their communities, they did it in the streets, and that's what we're doing. And not only that, we're now going to do that here. And we're going to start a new initiative that we're going to tell you about over the next 10 minutes or so. Actually, 10 minutes from one person and 10 minutes from me and one of our staff team. And we're going to talk about what that can look like right here in Lake Norman and why that's important. Before we do, I want you to hear what God is doing around the world and now starting in this country using what is called microchurches. We'll explain that in a moment. And it's not house churches, it's different. Microchurch, and we want you to hear about it. So listen, if you would, to David Nelms, who's the founder of the Timothy Initiative. I'm so honored to have with us today David Nelms, and David is a friend of mine of over 25 years. David pastored the church that I used to pastor in West Palm Beach, Florida, after I left there. But David also started an organization called the Timothy Initiative. I don't know of anybody in the world that knows more about church planting on a local level, whether it is in the United States or around the world, than David Nelms. And so I'm really honored to have David here. He's been at Life Fellowship before, and he's back with us today because I want him to take a moment and explain microchurches, what they mean, how they're being used around the world, and even how they're being used in the United States. So, David, welcome back to Life Fellowship, and thanks for being here in the middle of COVID. Tell us a little bit about microchurches, if you would.
Thank you, Dan. It's, as always, great to see you. I love Life Fellowship. You guys are just incredible. What God is doing around the world right now is just absolutely incredible. The church is growing, not just by people aren't running into the kingdom, they're just charging into the kingdom all over the world, especially Asia and Africa. And much of what's fueling the growth is what you and I, Dan, would refer to as micro churches. A micro church is just a church. Whatever definition you'd use for a regular church, you would use for a micro church. But the difference is they're not designed to see how big they can get. Because if they get bigger, you've got to have property and buildings and staff. And many of parts of the world where the micro church thing has taken off, you just can't do it that way. There's no resources, or it's illegal. And if you build a building, it may get blown up or burnt down, or you can't get permission to build it in the first place. And so rather than a model, kind of like an elephant model that we would use here in the States where you trot it, see how large you can get, it's more of a rabbit model, small but reproducing and multiplying. And so the idea is a pastor, a local church pastor that we would call the Paul, trains his church members that we call Timothy's, just regular Christ followers, to go out where they live, work, study, shop, and play, lead people to Christ. And when those new believers accept Christ, they begin discipling them right there. They kind of open up shop right there rather than bringing them back to the main campus. And what happens is that one soon becomes two, and then it becomes 3 and 4. They want their wife to hear, their husband to hear, their children, their parents, their best friends. And pretty soon you've got a little group of 15, 20, 25 people meeting together every week. They may meet in that person's home. They may meet under a tree. They may meet in a cave, on a rooftop, in an alley, a dried out riverbed, somebody's office. They can meet wherever. They can meet whenever. It doesn't have to be on Sunday morning. It's just whenever. And what happens is that little group, because it's so small, it's really designed for disciple making. There's a lot more intimacy, a lot more accountability with a smaller group, obviously. And so the goal is not for that little church to get bigger. Some of them do get bigger. Some of them get to the hundreds and hundreds, okay? But that's not the goal. The goal is once you reach 15 or 20, 25, maybe 30 people, to find 2 or 3 new Timothys that you can train to do the exact same thing. And the Timothy's new Timothy we call Titus. It's just simply the next generation. So the goal is not to see how big you can get. The goal is to see how many people you can disciple to become disciple makers who will turn around and do the exact same thing in the next village over, which might be a 5 or 10 kilometer walk. Now, is it working? Working incredibly well. We've seen in 13 years over 84,000 churches started this way, and we don't report them, Dan, until we see them. We have to verify it, and actually we have to verify it twice. Okay, and so it is happening. And typically, what we will see during our 2 years of training is at least a couple of churches planted from that Timothy, but always multiple generations of disciple makers. There will always be 4, 5, 6 generations of disciple makers in that newly planted church. Out of those generations, 1 or 2 more of those will actually start another church. And so it's somebody said to me once, it sounded like Amway to them. And I said, well, actually, Amway sounds to me like the book of Acts. Okay. And we tried to design what we're doing after Acts. In fact, the book of Acts is our church planting book. We tell our Timothys, read the book of Acts. Don't tweak it. Now, Americans have a hard time tweaking stuff, but don't tweak it. Leave it alone. Just do exactly what it says to do. And you know what? The book of Acts works. I like to say it's not only descriptive, it's prescriptive. It not only tells us what they did in the first century, it tells us what we're supposed to do.
David, in a culture right now that is just turned upside down for a lot of different reasons because of COVID during this time, but also just all the political turmoil and things that are going on, you're actually seeing how this is working in some of the places that you've discovered. Is there any example of a place that you've seen where a traditional American church has started launching these micro churches? Can you kind of give us just a little insight or a little perspective of what you've seen right on the ground with a micro church?
Yeah, well, I was just in a church in Clarksville, Tennessee, just maybe 2 months ago. A businessman, longtime Sunday school teacher, large church. He owns a body repair shop, and he just caught the burden of this thing, and he has started a new church a micro church in his body repair shop. But he has already started out of that micro church, and it's only maybe 6 months old, 9 months old. They've already started 4 more micro churches out of it, and this is during COVID. Another case I'm thinking of, and by the way, Dan, this guy is a businessman, never a single day in Bible college. And keep in mind to your church family there, when Jesus gave the Great Commission, when he told us to take the gospel to the whole world, to all nations, he was not talking to ordained pastors. There were none. The church hadn't been birthed yet when Jesus gave that commission to us. He wasn't talking to damn people like you and I. He was talking to people like that auto body shop owner. He was talking to Christ followers, fishermen, just regular, normal followers of Christ. See, we believe the Great Commission was not given to pastors. We believe it was given to Christ followers. The pastor's job is not to do the work of the ministry. The pastor's job is to equip the people to do the work of the ministry. And if the work of the ministry is anything, it's the Great Commission. It's the ministry of reconciliation. It's leading people to Christ and discipling that new believer to live like Jesus and to lead others to do the same. Back specifically to your question, what we found in the United States so far, there may be some exceptions coming down the road, but so far what we found is the microchurch strategy works best in the United States when it's directly connected to a strong Bible-based church, a church like you guys. And so there's oversight there. There's the ability to provide the ongoing coaching, and there's a larger network of potential Timothys, if I can use that word, that you can train. And so what we found so far in the 3 churches that I would say we're seeing it work the best in, one of them is a mega church. The other would be a mega church for the state it's in. It runs about 800-900, but it's in a state where it's 2-3% evangelical, which for that state, a church running 800 is huge. And then the third place where we're seeing it work is in a brand new church that just got started a little over a year ago. And Dan, this place is crazy. It's in Detroit. They're a little over a year old during COVID, and they've already started 14 micro churches out of this new church.
David, thank you so much for joining us at Life Fellowship this morning. We look forward to the next time you're going to be able to come and pay us a personal visit. And until then, we're just thrilled to be able to partner with you and the work that the Lord is doing through you and through your team at the Timothy Initiative. And so thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Dan. God bless you guys.
Just to kind of give you some insight on that also, by the way, because we were trying to get him to come here, but 15 minutes after I got done with that interview, he called me, and both he and his wife had been tested positive for COVID. So he's in quarantine. And this Thursday starts their annual conference where they bring people in from all over the country. His quarantine ends on Wednesday, and he's supposed to start this massive conference on Thursday. So you pray for him. But so let me just kind of give you this in a nutshell. I've invited Brad Milks up to be with us because Brad is integral to the launching of this new initiative that we're wanting to do. So microchurches are not house churches. Microchurches are not life communities. Microchurches are communities that are specifically built around the Great Commission. And it is to reach people who might otherwise never, ever darken the door of a church. There is a large portion of the people who live in our community who, if you invited them to come to a church service on a Sunday morning here, would look at you like you had three heads. You don't believe that? Let me ask you this. If a Muslim friend of yours asks you to go to the mosque with him, what is the likelihood that most of you are going to do that? It'd probably be somewhere between 0 and none, right? I'm not going to do that. However, what we do know is that people are open to conversations about their faith journey. And they'll often do that in situations that are less formal than they would in a building like this, where they don't understand. It feels like home for us, but for them it feels like visiting another planet. In addition, there are certainly certain things that happen at church and characteristics that happen. You know how like a family has their own thing? You got your own vibe, right? You got your own jokes, your own traditions, and so forth. So when you go in, it seems perfectly comfortable, and then you invite somebody from outside, and it's like, who are these weirdos? I mean, what are you talking about? You guys are crazy. But it's because you're family, and you enjoy that. Well, the churches are that way as well. Let's face it, we live in Lake Norman portion of Charlotte. Charlotte's very diverse, but Lake Norman is a very unique community. And in fact, if you look around us, the majority of people in this room reflect the general reflection of Lake Norman, which is going to be we're mostly white, middle and upper class, generally better educated than the typical community that's around, and we're very family oriented. You know, we like to hang out with our kids and our friends and so forth, and we're upwardly mobile. Most of us are looking to get to the next level. That's our culture. Nothing wrong with that, but you understand this, for somebody who's not comfortable or that culture is foreign to them, they look at us and like, well, I wouldn't be welcome here. I wouldn't fit. Now, would we like to have an integrated community where everybody comes in and just fits? I would love that. I've seen that very rarely. The church I pastored in Palm Beach, and David pastored after that, was such a church. We had 57 different nationalities at that church, and nobody was a majority. But you understand, Palm Beach County is far different. South Florida is far different than the Carolinas and the Piedmont and in Lake Norman. You can't make it something that it isn't already. But we do know this. There are pockets all around this area, people that we engage with, that we work with, that may not be right here in the Cornelius area, but that we still have interaction with, that while they may not come to our church, we interact with them, and we love them, we care about them. One of the things that was very important to me going into ministry 35 years ago was this. I come from blue-collar roots. My dad was a union guy. I come from farmers and railroaders. That's my background. I'm the first person to ever go to college. And when I went to college, I didn't quit until I got every degree I possibly could. I was sick about it, all right? And then I moved away. And I moved from Moberly, Missouri to Palm Beach, from the farm to literally one of the richest communities in the world. And all of this, I realized this. I'm not the same person I was when I grew up. When I go to family reunions, and one of my cousins was watching the first service and joked about it. But the fact is, I don't even pronounce my name the same way. When I'm in Missouri, my name is Burl. Can you believe that? It is. And don't you dare call me that. But my name, I don't even pronounce my name right. But here's the, I love those folks. They're my family. When I go there, I remember that. And I don't ever want a ministry that says you must be just like me, because the reality is I haven't always been just like me. We've got people in this community that we need to be reaching that we're absolutely not reaching. And if we're going to do what the elders of this church have called us to do, is to have a church where life is defined by living in community, investing in growth, finding your purpose, and embracing the Great Commission. The elders say we're doing a really good job on the 3 things, but on that 4th one, we're stinking up the place. We are not embracing the Great Commission. And you know why? Because people that often come to this church are people who have been part of churches elsewhere. And they move to our community and they join. Or they've been in some other church here in the community that is better at evangelizing than we are, but they want a deeper teaching. They want more methodical, expositional teaching. They want a more robust theology, and that's what we're about. And that's fine. Not every church is supposed to be the same. And we're not going to change that. That's who we've always been since we started 16 years ago. But the reality is this: we're doing a lousy job of changing the number of Christians in our community. And, I'm not for believing lies, all right? Let's face it. So what are we going to do to change it? So what we're doing is we're going to try this initiative with the idea of microchurches. Now, a couple of things as we get started. I'm going to have Brad do some explaining. But this is not a replacement for life community. So if you say, oh, I'm going to love my life community, I want to leave it. You're not going to leave it, all right? I want you to think of a train going down a track and it has 2 rails, right? The train is life fellowship. And yes, we meet, and we got the engine and all the passenger cars. We meet on Sunday. We got all of our, men's ministry, women's ministry, kids ministry. All those things are on our train. But there's going to be 2 tracks as well. And one of them is where discipleship occurs, and that's where life communities are happening. And we're going to continue those. But the missing rail for us has been evangelism. And this is where microchurches are going to be. And we're going to develop these microchurches so that we reach people who do not know Jesus. And we're wanting you to consider, if this is part of your mission, when you embrace your mission and when you are finding your purpose, evangelism is screaming at you, this is where you may want to explore and be a part of. And it's 2 rails that go in the same direction, and they're carrying the church. These are going to come under the authority of the elders of the church. Everybody who leads a microchurch is going to be a part of Life Fellowship. They're not renegades. We're going to make sure that they're doctrinally sound, but at the same time, these are folks who may never come to church. They may have dirt under their fingernails. They may be speaking another language. Their skin may not be the same tone as ours. They may live on the other side of the interstate. They may live in the interstate. They may be in a nursing home. They may live in a trailer park. They may be in inner city Charlotte. But these are people who need Jesus, and we're called to reach them. And woe be to us if we look under the fields and see them white in the harvest and say, well, I hope somebody else takes care of that. It ought to be our job to take the gospel to them personally. This is part of the mission. So, Brad, I want you to kind of walk through a little bit. Why in the world are we doing this, and why is this important in terms of spiritual things as well?
Yeah. And when we had the chance to go down to Atlanta to see this in action, I've been studying this for 10 years. We've been talking about it for a year. But to see it in action is mind-blowing. We show up, we went to a garage shop where there were 25 guys having a micro church. 3 of them had become believers, and so the pastor that was there was training someone to be the leader, and that leader got to baptize them. And so it's the
baptize
people
them where?
In the pond with snakes, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is like a pond. And the other thing too, tell them about the guy, the one guy that was part of that group that we saw. You remember the guy with the best?
Oh yeah, we would not expect him to come to Jesus. Let's just put it that way. And it's funny, his story was he comes to Jesus, and the week before that he got into a fight with a guy, and he said, the next time I see you, I'm going to beat you up. He sees him a week later, he gets out of the car and he goes, remember what I said to you last time? And the guy said, yeah. He goes, I love you, man. I need to give you a hug and tell you about Jesus. And so then they realized they were stopping an interstate while that was happening. And so it happens where the mission of God has been returned to the people of God. And where we want to start with this is the heart of God himself. When we look at God throughout Scripture, we see something amazing. We see that God desires to dwell with his people. We see it in creation, right? Adam and Eve are formed, and God is intimately involved in a relationship with them specifically. Then Adam and Eve do a good job of staying there, right? No, they sin, they send the world into chaos, rebellion. Flash forward a couple hundred years or so, and the tabernacle is set up. Moses is leading the Israelites through the desert. The tabernacle is set up, and the purpose for that is so God could dwell with his people. He desires to be with his people. Fast forward about 500 years, they build a temple. King David wants to build a temple, and God says, no, it needs to be Solomon. Solomon builds a temple, and in 2 Chronicles chapter 6, Solomon prays over the temple. Chapter 7, a fire of God comes down, takes the sacrifices, and God's glory fills the entire temple so that he lets everyone know, my presence is with you. Israelites don't do a good job. They continue to sin. They get sent into exile. But there's a promise given the Messiah. The Son of God himself comes in the form of man, being Jesus. John chapter 1 verse 14 says that Jesus came, the word of came to be flesh, and he dwelt with us. Another word for dwelt is tabernacled. He tabernacled with us. Jesus dies on the cross. The curtain of the temple is torn into two, signifying that we are now able to have a relationship with God. We can go right to him. Acts chapter 2 happens. The Spirit of God falls upon people, signifying, and we see this in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16, God, Spirit, dwells in us, and now we are the temples. We are the temples. We experience God on a daily basis in a very real way. And we see in Revelation 21 that we're going to be able to do that for all of eternity. And so why are we doing this? The heart behind it is so that we can proclaim the gospel, engage in God's mission, so that as people repent of their sin and come to know him, they can experience the presence of God that we experience every single day individually and when we gather corporately together as the body.
And that's the essence of the Great Commission, and that's what we've been called to do.
Yeah.
The letter E in life is what you're talking about, putting people into contact with God.
Yeah.
That's been his plan all along.
Absolutely.
All right, so to help us understand the difference between a life community and between a microchurch, because I'm afraid that some of us are going to get confused thinking they're one and the same, or that we're going to take our life communities and get rid of them, and now everything's... Explain that to us.
Yeah, life communities are so integral, just like every other ministry we have. And a life community, simply put, is for body health. How are we maturing one another? How are we coming alongside? Our life community has been amazing. Most of you know our story. We had 2 miscarriages in a period of 1 year apart, and they loved us through those dark days. Absolutely loved us. They came to our house when we went away for a little bit, and they cleaned our home top to bottom, which was amazing to have a clean home to come to. And so that they're all about how do we love one another well, and how do we build each other up in Christ. Microchurches is a church planning strategy, and it's not church planning to get to a building. There's nothing wrong with that. But how do we plant a church in its most simplest form so that it can multiply quickly?
All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Pastor Ben came here 3 years ago, and the intent was that we were going to plant other churches out of Life Fellowship. And with that, we were going to go to a school, we were going to rent it, we were going to take a group of people, win them to Christ, and then launch them out on their own. What happened to that? We was talking about Mooresville. What happened to that, and how did this happen the way it's happening now?
Right. So a lot of the same stuff is happening, but we learned some things along the way that we were missing. And back when we launched Lore's Mill, we were obedient to God's calling in that moment. God said to do it this way. We weren't 100% sure what it looks like, but we knew he said to go that route. And we still saw people come to know Jesus. We saw people enter discipleship relationships. And so we didn't have numerical success, if you will, but we were transformed. As I mentioned during the first service, I have been transformed in this because I realized that most of my evangelism techniques were centered on me instead of the Holy Spirit. And so when we went through this process, we had to realize the way that we're doing it moving forward, it is not dependent upon us. There is nothing I can do in my power to make someone come to know Jesus. Believe me, I've tried all of the horrible tactics that make that work. It doesn't. It is entirely dependent upon where is the Holy Spirit working in people's lives, because he is responsible for convicting people of sin and their need for Jesus.
All right. So, and in all honesty, traditional church planting in COVID is just not possible.
Not
anyway.
right now, no.
Yeah, and one things that keep in mind is if we had started up in Mooresville right now, we'd be in a horrible shape. I'm talking every week to pastors who are planting churches and YMCAs and schools. They haven't met since March, and they're probably at least a year away from meeting, and maybe longer. And things are changing politically in this country, depending on how elections go and so forth. There's a very real possibility that Christians are going to be shut out of public schools in the future to be able to plant churches in them anyway. It's already happening in some of the major cities, and it'll just spread across the country under the right circumstances. So, but we're seeing this work all around the world.
Yeah.
That's why, by the way, we've been doing the bank little thing, the $300, and we've seen the results from that already being reported back to us. So it's working around the world. Why can't it work here? And that's going to be our goal. Well, one of the churches that you and I we visited a couple of them, but one of the churches, they called it the Bondo Church. You know why they called it the Bondo Church? Because it was at a body shop. And these guys, they started meeting, and they were, how guys are, you kind of gather, and Next thing you know, there's jokes. And well, they were friends. The guy came to know Christ, and he says, well, let's come back and let's study the Bible.
Yeah.
These guys would never, ever, under their worst, on their best day, would never have walked into a church. If they walked into church, everybody would have broken their neck, turning to see what was that walked in. These are some rough-looking guys. And now they've replaced their cuss words with scripture and their dirty jokes with hymns. It's the coolest thing you've ever seen. And there's about 25 of them that are meeting, and they're starting other groups in their community. This is the potential that this has. And I've seen this in the world. I've visited these churches around the world. And the question is, we're not special in America. We just think we are. And the fact is, if you own a beauty shop, it may be that you could do this during your lunch hour in the back of the beauty shop. If you own a business, you got a warehouse, you clear out a corner of the warehouse and say, on Tuesday nights we're going to gather together. If you want to join us, great. We're going to open the Bible and we're going to talk about spiritual things. And you can come and you realize these people are going to come with no expectations. And some of them are going to cuss, and some of them are going to come with a beer, and some of them are going to, they're living with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, and they're going to be messy. And you know who those people remind me of? The people that Jesus used to have dinner with.
Yeah.
People that need Jesus. And we have to get out of this antiseptic evangelical bubble that many of us live in and realize that God has called us to reach the harvest fields that are wide unto harvest. And we stand on the edge of the field and look into them and say, well, I hope somebody goes take care of that. Well, we're them. We should be doing that. And this is just such a super, super opportunity. Well, so kind of closes up with this. What is next? Somebody says here, man, this is something that the Holy Spirit has already been working with me on, and I've got the gift of evangelism. I already know, man, my garage, I'm going to sweep it out, and we're going to do it in my neighborhood, or something like that. Where do we go? What happens next? What's the next steps?
Right. So hopefully you all got one of these cards when you walked in. Fill that out, and you can either put it in the offering box on the way out, or if I'm out there, you can hand it to me, and I'll be following up. And either tomorrow or Tuesday, we're going to have 2 informational meetings, one on Wednesday night from 7 till 8, and then one next Sunday from 7 to 8. And we'll be in contact about that more in detail.
All right, what if somebody's watching online?
You can email me, bmilks@lifecharlotte.com.
bmilks, just like milk with an S on it, all right? And all of our emails are always the same, by the way, for the church. Our first initial, our last name. You also find them on the website. But just email us, and we'll get you the information as well. And you say, I don't know for sure that I'm going to be a part of this, but I'm just got some questions. That's fine. There's no signing on the dotted line just because you come. And by the way, we understand not everybody. You say, I'm already leading a life group and it's going really, really well and it's growing and this isn't for me. Nope, no shame on that. All right, keep doing what you're doing. Keep discipling, staying in the Word, and help. But maybe there's somebody in your life group that has this passion that you might want to direct them to it. And the other thing we ask you to do is pray for us. Pray that we will see a harvest come that changes Lake Norman. Again, this church, if we spent $10 million to buy this campus and build these buildings and to turn it into a club, may God strike it by lightning and burn it to the ground this week. I'm serious. That is not why people sacrificed for this building. We sacrificed so that we could use it to equip people to send them around the world for the gospel. And the world begins on Catawba. All right? Sometimes we think, well, yeah, we're doing great things in India and Kenya and all these things. Yes, we are. But the world doesn't begin there. The world begins at Catawba. It begins at Cashin Woods, where I live, and in Mooresville and Huntersville and Charlotte, all these areas. It begins at your workplace. It begins where you hang out. And let's make sure that this goes forward, all right? I'm out of time. We're going to give some more information on this through podcast. By the way, we just recorded our 200th episode of Life Talks this week. I hope you'll check into that, continue to listen to that. But we'll be talking about this more in the weeks to come. We'll be talking about it more from church. Check our social media. If you have any questions, Brad's going to be out front, and he'll be glad to answer any questions, call you, have coffee with you this week. Pastor Ben and I are behind this. The elders have been working on it and praying about it for months. We've taken teams out to go look at it. So this is just kind of the next step forward, and let's see what God does. All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it very much.